There is a garden, there is a city, and there's a kingdom of God. And it is beautiful, and he is bringing it right now into our midst. Good morning, everybody. Welcome over to those in our Life Center and also to those who are joining us live stream as we are in one more week on our identity series. Hey, real quick before we get into the topic, we all know what's going on in Syria right now as Turkey is invading, especially that part where there are many, many Kurds living. There's just all kinds of deep, decades-long ethnic, racial tensions there. What you might not remember is that we have been supporting work going on for the Kurds in northern Iraq in a place called Sulaymaniyah, and for many years you guys have been very generously contributing to make possible two different family centers where especially women and children get really good ministry, a lot of good things going on. There's actually a church that's getting started. We're very, very excited. But there could be up to 1 million more refugees, Kurds, fleeing Syria, and so many of them are going to be heading right toward northern Iraq and heading right toward Sulaymaniyah and heading right toward, well, maybe where we have some stuff going on. So again, I just want to say it's kind of opportune. Like over the years, as you guys have been supporting this, we never even know what kind of things are going to come down the road. So just keep on praying about that. And so why I'm mentioning that is we got a nice report on our website today, our blog post. If you go and just check that out, you'll see some stuff. And there's a team of people going over, not from our church, but from one of our partners down in South America. They're actually heading over there on Tuesday to be doing some ministry. So just really keep all that bathed in prayer, and we'll just see if God has anything else that he wants us to do to help some folks that are really in some very, very difficult times. Well, we are continuing on in our series on identity, and today we're talking about meaning and mission. And what I want you to understand is you and I, we really discover our truest identity, our real identity, when we begin to discover what is meaning in life, what's the meaning for my life, and that's going to certainly have some stuff about morality and values and priorities, but in addition, begins to help us move into this thing called purpose and mission. You put all those things together, and we start to get a sense of this is what our identity truly is. Now, it doesn't take you very long to realize that everybody out there is talking about meaning and purpose. I mean, this is not a topic that's reserved only for Christians. And so I just have a couple of sayings from some really well-known, famous people, whether philosophers, theologians, thought leaders. Here's one from Viktor Frankl, who was a concentration camp survivor of the Nazi Germany time. He said, "Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure." That's what Freud believed. Nor is it a quest for power. That's what another psychologist named Adler taught. But really what life is all about is a quest for meaning. And wow, is Viktor Frankl ever uniquely positioned to talk about this quest for meaning? And we need meaning if we're going to even stay alive. One of the greatest philosophers of North America, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said, we're going to reframe this in a moment, but he said, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Now, here's what I just would like to say. It doesn't have to be an either or. I could say, well, the purpose of life is not mainly or merely to be happy. And maybe I might even say, hey, maybe the only way we're going to truly be happy is when we have a life that has been lived well, which means it's been useful, honorable, compassionate. We've actually made a difference. I wonder if that might be the greatest source of happiness and satisfaction you and I will ever discover. Winston Churchill had this really witty comment: we make a living by what we get, which is why we have our jobs, our careers, our vocations. We all need to have a livelihood to get the resources that we and our families need to survive. But he went on, we make a life by what we give. And so, again, it's not an either or. We need to make a living, but we also need to make a life. So there's something really significant about a life of giving, a life of generosity. Eleanor Roosevelt, one of the, I think, phenomenal women leaders of the history of the United States, she said, the purpose of life is to live it. And I'm going to explain why that's really significant a little bit later. To taste experience to the utmost. To reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience. I'm going to come back to this, but she's saying, look, the purpose of life is to live it, not to watch it. Not to watch it go by, to live it. And then Rosa Parks, what an amazing leader. What a woman who, with great compassion and courage, wound up being a part of the civil rights movement. I have learned over the years, she says, that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. When you know what must be done, that does away with fear. When you know what life is all about, when there's a powerful, motivating purpose and meaning, you can live life in such a better way. Here's one more. Eric Erickson, another psychologist. everybody, sooner or later, we become dissatisfied and disgruntled without a sense of being useful. And while over the years, I've had thousands of conversations with people. Any pastor has, any counselor has. We just, conversations. And you slowly begin to discover that when we don't have a sense that we're of use, we are of value, there's something significant, we start to get a little dissatisfied and disgruntled and uneasy and frustrated. And so these people are all tracking with something very, very significant. I'd like to turn to John chapter 4, and I'm only going to look at a few verses. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the backstory, but one of the really great stories of Jesus, he is having an encounter in a Samaritan town, and it's with a Samaritan woman, and it's the woman at the well is how the story is known. So here's a little bit of the backstory. Samaritans and Jews, they just do not get along. They have this sort of uneasy coexistence. There's a lot of mutual irritation these groups have from one another, and sometimes it just deteriorates into outright hostility. And here are the disciples. They are on their way through the region of Samaria, and you can usually make their way through if you're Jewish, but what happens is you usually don't find much of a welcome in the towns, but they're hungry. They've been traveling. Jesus is tired, and so as Jesus sits down at a well outside this one town to rest, the disciples go into town to see if they can get some food. Now, it's in the middle of the day, which makes the story a little bit more unusual because there's a woman who comes to the well in the middle of the day when people don't come to the well to draw water, and there's Jesus. And Jesus winds up initiating a conversation with her, which really just violates all kinds of social customs and mores. It's a bit scandalous, actually, that he, first of all, a Jew would talk to a Samaritan, but he, a Jewish male, would talk to a Samaritan female. It's really a bit on the scandalous side. But what's pretty interesting about Jesus is Jesus doesn't give a rip about social conventions when it comes to his mission, and that is to love everybody that matters. And this woman so deeply matters. And so he winds up having this conversation. That's what really most of chapter 4 is all about, where Jesus kind of puts on this master class of compassionate ministry and just helping her understand this is the truth of God, and this is who God is, and this is who God is for you. It's just a wonderful conversation. And she's like really being impacted by his words. Well, the conversation is going on, and then the disciples come back, and they, this is a little odd. Jesus is talking to this Samaritan woman, and they're embarrassed. They just kind of stand there looking a little bit foolish. And the woman who was able to maybe just have a conversation with one Jewish male, now that there's 13 of them, it's too much, and so she just says right back into town. But she goes back into town with a message that's already touched her heart, and she says, hey, there's somebody out there. He's different. He might be the Messiah. And so the town's starting to be abuzz. Well, the disciples are out there, and they, humming and hawing, and they finally break the awkward silence. And so we read in verse 34, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. And Jesus says, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Well, the disciples, being clueless as they usually are, did somebody else go get them food? And then now this next verse is really, I think, the key verse. My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Man, there are so many insights in this story about meaning and mission. Let me just tell you three of them briefly. Number one is the deepest meaning and the best mission in life is all about people. Jesus' mission is all about people. Jesus has an amazing love for all kinds of people. It doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what their life. And sometimes, in fact, you even say, the worse off people are, the more Jesus loves them. The greater the needs, the more Jesus wants to move into their orbit and begin to do something about them. And that's exactly where this woman is. This woman does not know it. She did not know when she woke up, but her whole world is about to be turned upside down. In fact, maybe her world is already upside down. Jesus is going to turn her right side up. And she comes to the well, and she's lonely. She's longing for love. She's been married multiple times. She's ostracized. She is marginalized. She needs mercy. She needs forgiveness. She needs help. She needs hope. She's got no real meaning in life. She's got no real mission in life. And Jesus begins to encounter her and brings all of those things in her life, because you see, that's what mission is all about. Mission is all about coming into the lives of people who are in need and doing something to help them just get a little bit better, maybe a whole lot better. You guys have heard this phrase, be kind to everybody you meet. Because everybody you ever meet, they're carrying burdens you just don't know anything about. They've got hurts you just don't know anything about. They've got struggles you just don't know anything about. So be kind to everybody you meet. I mean, that's just kind of Jesus. He's not only going to be kind, but he is going to be this missional activist moving into their world to get to know them, to get to know their story, and to see if he can't help them write a far better story, the story that his Father in heaven has for them. And so that's what's going on right now. I mean, mission is all about people. Jesus' mission is all about people. In this case, it's just one, this Samaritan woman at the well. Number 2 is mission energizes Jesus. It doesn't drain him. I mean, every now and then, we kind of give missional activity a bad rap. We think, oh man, if I'm doing stuff that matters, if I'm doing stuff that's kind of difficult, I'm just going to get depleted, I'm going to get drained, I'm going to get worn out. Man, Jesus is not getting worn out by doing mission. And in fact, Jesus says he's energized. This is my food. Well, what's food do? Food supplies you. Food nourishes you. Food sustains you. And Jesus said, that's what mission does for me. It sustains, it nourishes, it energizes. And wow, what a wonderful way to live. We don't have to be afraid of being drained and depleted when we're doing stuff that matters in the lives of people that need us to. It actually energizes us. What de-energizes us is when we're not doing anything meaningful, when we're just sort of going through our days, just the routine, one day after the other, not doing much that matters, not doing much that counts, not doing much that makes a difference. We just start to get sluggish and lethargic, and we kind of feel tired. I've had this I think normally I exercise a fair amount, but for about the last month, I haven't been able to exercise much. Now, in part because I was on doing some missions travel for a few weeks, and then getting back, life was just so out of balance that I haven't been able to get my rhythms in. And you would think that after 1 month of not exercise, I would be more refreshed than ever, right? Wrong. I am starting to feel like a slug. I mean, the less I exercise, the more drained and depleted I feel. See, that's the really odd, ironic thing. The more you exercise, the more you take care of yourself, the more you invest, like the more energized that you are. And the more you sit around, the more drained you get. It's just like this upside down world. And that's exactly what meaning and mission do. They don't drain you, they energize you, they sustain you, they send you out with this amazing energy of God. Well, that's what Jesus tells us here. My food is to do the will of him who sent me. I'm going to keep on doing it until I get it all done. Here's the third thing. Jesus pulls you and I into his mission. He says, come, follow me. I love this image. You see, Jesus knows that this is where our life is. This is where our identity is. Your deepest, truest identity is when you and I are partaking in meaning and mission, where life is all about people and life is all about you and I giving as much as we can to make as many people better, to make the best difference that we can. And Jesus just says, come and follow me. And you know what's so cool in this story is the woman. She wakes up marginalized, ostracized, like one of the lowest people on the social ladder in her town. And Jesus winds up turning her into the most important person in that town, because she winds up going into town. She said, hey, and by the way, this is amazing because she has lived with, this, again, being ostracized, being looked down on. She is now fearless, like Rosa Parks was. She's fearless. And she just said, listen, I met somebody amazing out there. And she becomes like the first missionary to that town. Jesus is outside the town. He's connected with her. She goes into town. She just starts telling the good news of the Messiah that's outside the town. And she's so full of life, she's so full of joy, she's so full of hope that people say, oh my, what's going on with this woman? And so they all go out to see this one called Jesus. And so here's Jesus. He's got meaning and mission, and just passed it right on to her. And now she's got meaning and mission. She's become the sponsor of the mission of Jesus into Samaria, when you see some other times in the gospel where Jesus can't go into Samaria because nobody would let him into their towns. Here's this woman who says, hey, wide open door. I just love that. Jesus is pulling you and I, even when we don't think we have anything to offer, he's pulling you and I into his meaning and his mission. Now, I do have to say, though, that there are some detours and dead ends that our culture is throwing our way. And there's a couple of big ones. You guys remember last week when I talked about we are human beings, fearfully, wonderfully made. There's actually something truly amazing about what it means to be human, to be alive. And you're also in process. You're not yet all you will one day be. And so you are not only a human being, but you are a human becoming. And what God wants for you is to become the best possible version of you. So we're human beings, we are human becomings. And in between, there's this thing called doing. How do we become more of who we are? Well, it's by doing. So, for example, how you become a more forgiving person is by forgiving, practicing this thing called forgiveness. How you become more of a servant, okay, you might already be a servant, but how you become an even better servant is by serving. That's doing something, doing this thing called service. How do you become a more generous person? Well, you become a more generous person by giving. I mean, that's just how life is. How do you get smarter? You get smarter by studying. How do you get more skilled? Well, you get skilled by practicing. So, I mean, this thing called doing is just a part of how we become all we're meant to become. But now today, what I just want to say is if there's one thing we ought to do more than anything else, is we ought to do things that are meaningful and missional. And when we're doing stuff that's meaningful and missional, that is when we are truly becoming these meaning-filled, missional friends of Jesus, which is what we are meant to be. But our culture is working against it. Nike, I'm going to borrow one of their slogans, just do it. Great phrase, just do it. That really fits in nicely with this doing. Just do meaning, just do mission. And, we also mentioned last week that little phrase, carpe diem, seize the day. Just do it, seize the mission, seize the moment, seize the opportunity, do something with it. But here's what our culture is doing, two different things. Number one, instead of just do it, our culture says, well, just buy it. Just buy it. Seize the credit card and just buy it. Do you know, more and more people are identifying shopping as their favorite leisurely activity. Shopping is their number one form of entertainment. Just buy it. One cultural observer has said the old philosophers used to say, I think, therefore I am. Today we want to say, I shop, therefore I am. And we become a nation of shoppers. Sometime back, maybe months ago, I had just mentioned this book called The Attention Merchants. But I love the subtitle. It's The Epic Scramble to Get Inside Our Heads. The epic scramble to get inside our heads. Do you know who is scrambling more epically than anybody else to get inside our heads are the merchandisers, the marketer, the advertisers, the salespeople. They are doing everything they can to get inside our heads to tell us that, you know what, if you're not happy, just go out and buy something and you'll get happy. If you're not satisfied, just go out and do a little bit of shopping and find that little thing that's going to satisfy you, make you happy. And that message never stops coming our way. And so we just keep on seasoning the credit card to just go out and buy it. And what happens is we wind up having lives that are filled with things we can't afford and things that once we get them, we say, boy, it didn't really make me very happy anyway. So, of course, the message, well, that's sure, but go out and buy something else and that will. So just buy it is one of the sort of detours and dead ends. But here's another one. Let me just use the language of just watch it. Seize the remote control. Just watch it. Do you know, 21st century North America is one of the most passive cultures in human history. We have become a nation of spectators. We are no longer doing what Eleanor Roosevelt said. We're no longer experiencing reality directly. We are now experiencing it vicariously by watching others who are experiencing reality. So, for example, instead of you and I going out and learn how to dance, we will watch a celebrity learn or not learn how to dance. Becky, I'm not going to go get dancing lessons. I'm sorry. But instead of hanging out with our friends, we will watch a show called Friends and watch them hang out with one another. I mean, it just goes on and on. And then there's this bizarre feature called reality shows, which you guys do know that reality shows are the furthest thing from reality that there is. We ought to call them unreality shows. But we're becoming a nation of spectators. Do you know, a Nielsen study in 2017, as they studied a vast number of people, surveyed, they came to understand that the typical North American adult watches 4 or more hours of TV a day. Now, if you factor that in until the age of 65, that means you will spend 7 years of those 65 years watching TV. 7 years of your life, if you make it to 65, will be spent watching TV. Now, in June of this year, the U.S. Department of Labor released another study and said, you know what, that 4 hours is probably a little low. It's more like closer to 5 hours. I'm going to show you some statistics about that. Listen, you look study after study, they're all coming back with the same thing. And then here's what happens. We all say, oh, that's not me. That's other people. I don't watch anywhere near that much TV. And yet that's a little bit of a distortion bias at work. We just have no idea of how much TV we're watching. And plus, that's not the only thing. And by the way, that is still the number one leisure activity that we do. 51% of our leisure time is spent watching TV, but the other 49% is spent in non-work related social media use. So just a massive amount of our entertainment and leisure is going toward these very, very passive activities. Now, I'm going to show you something here first, and then we're going to put that up a little larger for you in just a moment. And so I'll have to read a couple of these things, but do you know the average time spent in a lifetime? Going up to 72 years of age, 1 year and 8 months doing housework. Now, I know some of you women are thinking, if the guy in my life would just do a little more of his fair share, I could knock my amount of time down. Okay, look at this. 2 years and 2 months of your life will be spent shopping. Think about that. More than 2 full years of your life will be spent shopping. Now, we drop down here. Look at this. 6 years and 8 months will be spent on social media, and 8 years and 4 months watching TV. I put those together, and you get 15 years of our life will be spent on social media and watching TV. Do I need to say any more? That our culture has simply derailed and detoured, hijacked meaning and purpose. I mean, this has become meaning and purpose. I just kind of get a chuckle out of all these people who wind up screaming, we need this work-life balance. Listen, that's just a myth. We don't need work-life balance. We just need life balance. We need entertainment, leisure life balance, because that's what we're spending most of our time doing. We would have so much time. We would have 15 years of time. Heck, knock it down to 10 years. Give yourselves 5 more years of making a difference, doing something of meaning and purpose. Why don't you go ahead and just flash it up there for a moment, the big picture, that way people can see. No, go back to the other one. Or did you guys already do that? I wasn't watching. Yeah. So there's stats. Pretty sobering. Okay, let me shift gears for a moment. The bucket list. Have you guys ever seen the movie The Bucket List? I'm going to give you another idea how we can think about this. The Bucket List came out in 2007, and Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are playing the two characters. Jack Nicholson is playing billionaire Edward Cole. He just buys hospitals that are inefficient. He buys them. He makes them, inefficient, impersonal, but efficient. And he's lonely. He's been through a couple of marriages. He's got no relationships. He's got no friends. His coworkers don't like him. And then Morgan Freeman is playing Carter, who is an auto mechanic, and just his delightful personality, humor. He's smart. He's winsome, just like every other role Morgan Freeman ever plays. And yet they both get thrown together because they both wind up finding out that they've got a really serious cancer diagnosis, and it's terminal, and they have to have like really drastic stuff. And so they wind up being in the same hospital room, and they're going through surgery and chemo. And we're going to pick up a scene where Edward has discovered a bucket list piece of paper that Carter had thrown on the floor. Let's watch this. Edward finds a crumbled list on the floor. It is the bucket list that Carter had thrown away that night. Edward picks it up, he's reading it, and he asks, "What is this?" Carter is kind of embarrassed, because as a college student, Carter had written down a philosophy class bucket list of things he wanted to accomplish. Young man's dreams, he calls them. Earn $1 million, become the first black president, none of which ever happened. So in the hospital, he starts writing a new list, only to find out his diagnosis is worse than he thought, and his time shorter than he knew. Now, right now, Carter's feeling pretty good, but he knows he doesn't have long to live. So he explains to Edward the new list he started. Help a complete stranger for the good, laugh until I cry, witness something majestic. Edward is not impressed with what's on Carter's list. Cutesy, he says. Extremely weak is what Edward calls Carter's list. Well, Carter says it doesn't matter, it's pointless. And Edward says, I disagree. Don't you want to go out with guns blazing? Don't you want to have a little fun? So Edward starts writing his items down on that list. Skydiving. Out loud he says, now we're on to something. He writes a few more things, and Carter gets the list back, and he looks at what Edward has written, and now Carter starts laughing. Kiss the most beautiful girl in the world? Get a tattoo? Is that the sum of your ambition? He asks Edward. And then he says, I've taken baths that are deeper than your ambitions. Edward scoffs. You think 45 years went by fast? He's alluding to the 6 to 12 months they may have left. We can do this. We should do this. Now, for the rest of the movie, they are off and running on their bucket list adventure, and it is a study in contrast. Here's Edward, who his bucket list is all about these wow experiences of travel and entertainment. And what Carter's trying to do is he's trying to help Edward understand that, well, maybe there's something a little more significant. Maybe there are relationships that we both have that need tended, that need mended, that need healed, that need treasured. Maybe it's the people in our life that matters more. And so the rest of the movie is them going into this back and forth dialogue. I think Carter is really onto something. What if it's people and relationships that are really what life is all about, and what all of our bucket lists ought to be filled with is encounters with people that are full of love and service and life and energy and laughter and joy and making a difference in their lives. But that's not something that Edwards is very easily picking up on. So I knew we were going to be doing this message today, and I had prepared on the devotional. It's on the chair there, but I prepared the devotional. And by the way, so if you pick up on the resources, one of the things we're going to tell you is how you can maybe start to create your own bucket list. That'll be one of the exercises, and we have a blog this week that's going to be talking a little more about that. But I actually sent word out to our small group this past week and say, hey, when we get together on Friday, let's just talk about what could be in our bucket list. And I'll tell you what's really interesting is when you look at a bucket list that Jesus recommends, these are the kinds of themes that ought to fill our real bucket list. And when bucket lists are filled with these kinds of things being done in the lives of the people that we care about and the kind of people that we interact with, somehow life gets very, very satisfying. And so as we talked this past Friday night, I was just I almost felt like it was in a sacred moment where we're all talking about people that we care about and some people that we don't even know, and how can we wind up living lives that bring these kinds of realities into their lives. And that just seemed really, really important for us. It's something that we really wanted to do. And that's what Edward is trying to avoid, and that's what Carter is trying to help Edward move into. This is exactly what Jesus wound up doing in John chapter 4, bringing all these realities into the life of a marginalized Samaritan woman. Well, the movie continues through all their adventures, and then they have a little bit of falling out, a little bit of friction. And then Carter winds up, he takes a turn for the worse, and he needs to have surgery. Let's just watch another really short clip that's very near the end of the movie. Carter did not make it through emergency surgery. And so then we pick up the film with Edward speaking at the Celebration of Life service for his friend Carter. And Edward says he is in a strange setting. One he has always avoided because it meant caring enough for somebody to attend their funeral. And Edward says, the simplest thing is, I loved him and I miss him. You can feel the deep emotion. Carter and I saw the world together, which is amazing when you think only 3 months ago we were complete strangers. He pulls the paper out and he crosses that one off the bucket list. Then he says these amazing words. The last months of his life were the best months of mine. He saved my life, and he knew it before I did. The last months of Carter's life became the best months of Edward's life. He had saved me, and he knew it before I did. What's Edward talking about? Well, did you notice what else was crossed off that list? Did you notice that? He had crossed off kissing the most beautiful girl in the world. Turned out that Edward only had one daughter, and he's been estranged from her for many, many years. And Carter kept on saying, you got to reconnect, you got to reconnect, you've got to reconnect. And finally, Edward does. And when he reconnects with his estranged daughter, he finds out he has a granddaughter that he never knew existed. And he gets down on his knees and he hugs her. And he kisses the most beautiful girl in the world. Now that's because one person named Carter believed that it was worth everything just to do whatever he could to help this man named Edward discover true meaning. Edward became that just one person that God would do anything to help him discover life. And he saved me before I even knew it. And by the way, isn't that what Jesus has done for you and I? He saved you and I before we ever knew it. That Samaritan woman, he saved her before she ever knew it. Do you guys know we were all on the bucket list of Jesus? You were on his bucket list, and he saved you before you knew it.